Imagine a future where a barrel of fresh water costs more than a barrel of oil.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about, some kind of movie script or a dystopian novel. I'm talking about a terrifyingly real economic trajectory.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It is. Imagine a world where nations don't go to war over ideology or borders, but simply for the right to control the headwaters of a river.
Which is already happening in some places.
Right. Imagine cities, modern, bustling metropolises, where the taps run dry not just for a few hours, but for months at a time. This is the day zero scenario.
Yeah.
And for many parts of the world, including, significant chunks of India, the clock is ticking louder every single day.
It really is. We grow up hearing water is life, which is, of course, a biological fact. But in the 21st century, water is so much more than that. It is politics, it's economics, it is the single biggest constraint on our development.
The defining chapter.
Arguably the defining challenge of our generation. And the real paradox is that we live on a blue planet. We see the oceans on a map and we just assume abundance, but that blue.
Yeah.
It's an illusion when it comes to human survival.
That is exactly what we are unpacking today. Welcome back to another deep dive. I'm your host, and today we are on a very specific, very high-value mission.
I like the sound of that.
We are doing a full, comprehensive summary of the NCERT Class 12 Geography textbook, India, People and Economy, specifically Chapter 6, Water Resources.
But, and this is so crucial, we aren't just reading the chapter. I mean, anyone can read a textbook. Our job is to synthesize it.
Right. We're tailoring this deep dive specifically for the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel audience. Our goal is to take the static text from the NCERT, which, let's be honest, can be a little dry sometimes, and link it directly with the dynamic, evolving world of UPSC previous year questions, or PYQs. We want to show you how the exam setters think, where the traps are, and how this one chapter is basically a goldmine for both prelims and mains.
Exactly. We're bridging that gap between just knowing the facts and using the facts to actually clear the exam.
Before we jump into the deep end, I do have a humble ask for you. These deep dives, they take a massive amount of research to put together. We dig through the books, the papers, the exam archives to bring you this synthesis.
A lot of work goes into this.
It does. So if you find value in this, if it helps you visualize these complex topics, please subscribe to the Simplified UPSC by PPP channel. It really is the best way to support the creation of this content.
It really helps the channel grow.
And for those of you who are capable and, want to ensure we can keep the lights on and the high-value content flowing, please consider supporting us on Patreon.
And a huge shout out to our existing supporters. Your backing allows us to do the deep research required to make these connections. You are quite literally fueling this knowledge engine.
Absolutely. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a valuable comment. Let us know what clicked for you, or maybe challenge us on a point. Engagement helps the algorithm get this knowledge to more serious learners just like yourself.
Right. The community is a big part of this.
Now, regarding resources, don't panic about writing every single statistic down. Free notes with practice PYQs are available right now on our public Telegram channel.
And for those who want, let's say, the deluxe experience, we have the private Telegram library. This gives you access to all the videos in the series at once, plus organized premium notes.
And what do we mean by premium?
We're talking detailed breakdowns, extra PYQs, and even model mains answers that show you exactly how to structure your arguments for the exam.
If you want in on that, just DM us on the public Telegram channel. Okay, housekeeping done. Let's get to the water. NCERT Class 12, Chapter 6.
Let's set the stage.
Yeah.
The chapter opens with a really fundamental concept that seems simple but is actually quite complex in practice. Water is a cyclic resource. It evaporates, it rains, it flows, it returns to the ocean. Theoretically, it's a renewable, it should last forever.
It should.
But the demand we are placing on this cycle has completely outpaced its natural rhythm. We're effectively breaking the cycle.
Which brings us right to Section 1, the water paradox. I like to call this the blue planet lie.
Ah, that's a good name for it.
You look at the globe, you see all that blue, and you think, problem solved. But the numbers tell a very, very different story.
It is the ultimate mirage. Yes, 71% of the Earth's surface is water, but 97% of that is saline ocean water. You can't drink it, you can't water your crops with it.
Useless for survival, basically.
Right. That leaves us with just 3% fresh water. But here's the kicker. Of that tiny 3%, a huge chunk, something like two-thirds of it, is locked up in ice caps and glaciers. So the effective availability, the water we can actually get our hands on in rivers, lakes, and underground, is a microscopic fraction of the total water on Earth.
Okay, so let's zoom in on India. This is statistical gold for your prelims. And if you're writing a mains answer on water stress, this is basically your introduction paragraph right here.
You have to know these numbers.
Listen to these ratios carefully. India occupies about 2.45% of the world's land area.
Okay, roughly 2.4%. A small slice of the global pie.
And on that slice, we hold about 16% of the world's population.
That is a massive demographic load on such a small piece of land.
But, and here's the really scary part, we only have 4% of the world's water resources.
Just let that ratio sink in. 16% of humanity fighting over 4% of the water. I mean, to give you a comparison, a country like Brazil has about 3% of the world's population, but holds roughly 12% of the world's fresh water. They're water rich.
So we're operating on a resource budget that is 4 times tighter than the global average.
Exactly. This isn't just scarcity. It's a demographic pressure cooker.
Let's break down the math of availability that the NCERT provides. It throws some pretty big numbers at us. It says the total precipitation, so rain and snow, that lands on India in a year is estimated at about 4,000 cubic kilometers.
4,000 cubic kilometers. It sounds like an ocean. Why are we worried?
It does. It sounds like a lot.
But you have to treat water like a salary. That 4,000 is your gross income before all the deductions. You don't get to keep all of it.
Okay, so what are the deductions?
Well, a huge amount evaporates immediately because of our tropical heat. A massive amount just flows straight into the sea during flash floods in the monsoon before we can even catch it. And a lot seeps deep into the soil in areas where we can't easily extract it.
So what's our net income? What can we actually spend?
The text says the available water from surface flow and what it calls replenishable groundwater is only 1,869 cubic kilometers.
Wow, we've already lost more than half.
We have, but wait, it gets worse. We can't even use all of that because of topography and geology. You know, you can't build a dam in every single gorge in the Himalayas. It's just not geologically stable.
Right, so cut it down again. What's the bottom line?
The total utilizable water resource is just 11,122 cubic kilometers.
Unbelievable. We started with 4,000 and ended up with roughly 1,100. That is a steep tax bracket.
It is, and that 1,122 is split. 690 cubic kilometers comes from surface water, your rivers, your lakes, and 432 cubic kilometers comes from groundwater. That is our national budget. We cannot spend more than that without bankrupting nature.
This really highlights how fragile our accessible liquid freshwater supply actually is, and this brings us immediately to a connection with the exams. We have a prelims question from 2013 that really touches on this concept of distribution.
Yes, the 2013 question was a classic concept check. It asked about the distribution of fresh water on Earth. The premise was that most fresh water exists as ice caps and glaciers. That was the given.
Yep.
Then it asked you to identify the largest proportion of fresh water after the ice caps. The options were things like atmosphere, lakes and rivers, groundwater, and soil moisture.
Now, if I'm just using my common sense and looking out the window, I see a river. I don't see groundwater. So my first instinct might be to click lakes and rivers.
And that is precisely the trap. It's what we call visibility bias. The correct answer is groundwater.
Groundwater.
Yes. The hierarchy of fresh water goes like this. Ice caps and glaciers are number 1 by a huge margin. Groundwater is a distant second. Then way, way down the list, you finally get lakes and rivers.
So the rivers we worship, the lakes we vacation at, that's just a tiny drop in the bucket compared to what's hidden underground.
Exactly. Our most visible sources are actually a very small slice of the total freshwater pie. And this matters because it explains why the invisible groundwater crisis, which we're about to discuss, is so incredibly dangerous. We're draining a massive reservoir that we can't even see, and it's actually our primary backup.
Precisely. Okay, let's move to section 2 and talk about that visible water first. Surface water and river basins. The NCERT lists the 4 major sources: rivers, lakes, ponds, and tanks.
And the river statistics are fascinating. India has something like 10,360 rivers that are longer than 1.6 kilometers. That's a vast network of arteries pumping life across the subcontinent.
But they're not distributed equally, are they? It's not like every state gets its fair share of rivers.
Not at all. There is a massive spatial variation, as the book calls it. I mean, imagine the country is sort of tilted. The catchment areas of the Ganga, the Brahmaputra, and the Barak rivers, so basically the north and northeast systems, are enormous.
Right.
These basins account for only about 1/3 of the country's land area.
And 1/3 of the land.
But they hold 60% of the total surface water resources.
60%. That's a huge imbalance. 1/3 of the land has more than half the water. This explains everything. It explains why the Northeast floods while, parts of Maharashtra face drought in the very same month.
It's the core of our water geography. And conversely, you have the South Indian rivers, the Godavari, the Krishna, the Kaveri. Now, the text notes something very interesting here. It says, the South Indian rivers are better harnessed compared to the Ganga and Brahmaputra basins.
Better harnessed. What exactly does that mean in this context?
It means we've built more dams, more barrages, more irrigation canals relative to the total flow in the south. The percentage of water that is actually utilized is higher there.
I see.
In the north, especially with the Brahmaputra, the water volume is so massive and the terrain is so difficult that a lot of it flows into the Bay of Bengal completely unused. It's what you call potential water, not harnessed water.
The text also makes a special mention of lagoons and backwaters. When I think of backwaters, I immediately think of, a houseboat in Aleppo, sipping some tea.
It's iconic imagery, for sure, but economically, it's an absolute lifeline. The states of Kerala, Odisha, and West Bengal have these vast surface water resources in the form of lagoons. Now, usually you think of fresh water for farming, but this water is generally brackish. It's a mix of salt and fresh.
So you can't drink it, right?
No, you can't drink it. But, and this is the interesting part, local farmers have adapted. It's used extensively for fishing and for irrigating certain salt-tolerant crop varieties, like specific types of paddy and, of course, coconuts. It's a great example of human adaptation to local geography.
Speaking of identifying geography, let's link this to a PYQ. Prelims 2014 had one of those matching questions about wetlands.
Right, a classic format. This question asked you to match wetlands like Haryali, Kiladeo, and Kolaroo to their river confluences. For example, Haryali wetlands are at the confluence of the Bees and Satluj. Kolaroo Lake is associated with the Musi and Krishna rivers.
And why does this matter in the context of Chapter 6? Why is UPSC asking this?
It shows that they want you to know the location of water, not just the volume. Surface water isn't just a number, it creates ecosystems. Wetlands act as natural sponges. They store water, they recharge groundwater, they filter pollutants. And looking ahead, there's a really clear connection to the 2025 General Studies Paper 1 mains question.
Oh, the 2025 paper. That's fresh. What is the question?
It asked about the distribution and density of population in the Ganga River Basin, with special reference to land, soil, and water resources.
Wow, that sounds like a direct application of what we just discussed.
It is a direct application. You simply cannot answer why the Ganga Basin is so densely populated without discussing the very statistic we just mentioned. That the basin holds a disproportionate share of surface water, part of that huge 60% figure.
Ah, okay.
The abundance of water combined with that fertile alluvial soil is what supports the massive population density. The resource availability drives the demographics, you see. The static fact from the book becomes the core of your argument in your mains answer.
That is the Simplify UPSC approach right there. Connect the stat to the social reality. Okay, let's go underground. Section 3. Groundwater resources, the invisible reservoir.
We mentioned earlier that India has about 432 cubic kilometers of replenishable groundwater. But again, the story here is one of stark regional disparity. The haves and the have-nots.
So who are the haves in the groundwater world?
Surprisingly, or perhaps not, given the surface water stats, the Ganga and Brahmaputra basins again hold about 46% of the total groundwater potential. The water table there is generally high because the massive rivers are constantly recharging the aquifers below.
But having potential and actually using it are two very different things, right? I mean, just because you have money in the bank doesn't mean you're spending it.
That's a perfect analogy. And this is where the utilization rates get really critical. The text classifies states based on how aggressively they pump groundwater. You have the very high utilization group.
And who's in that group?
Punjab, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Tamil Nadu.
Punjab and Haryana, of course. That's the Green Revolution belt.
Exactly. Then you have moderate utilization in states like Gujarat, UP, BR, Maharashtra. And finally, you have low utilization in places like Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Kerala.
Wait, that seems completely backward. The states with the most water, like Odisha and other parts of the east, are using it the least. And the states with less rainfall, like Punjab and Rajasthan, are pumping it like there's no tomorrow.
That is the great tragedy of our policy and economics. In Punjab and Haryana, the Green Revolution it demanded the growth of water-intensive crops like rice and wheat. To feed those thirsty crops in a semi-arid region, farmers had no choice but to drill tube wells, millions of them.
So to use your phrase, Punjab is drinking the milkshake way too fast. What happens when you drink the milkshake too fast? The text uses some really strong language about the consequences.
It creates a cascade of disasters. First, the obvious one. The water table declines, you have to drill deeper and deeper every year. This increases the cost of farming because you need bigger pumps, more electricity. But then comes the really scary part, the chemical change. The water quality itself starts to turn against you.
Let's talk about the specific pollutants. This is prime prelims fodder. You need to know this.
Absolutely. In Rajasthan and Maharashtra, overwithdrawal has led to increased fluoride concentration.
Fluoride. How does that happen?
When the water table drops, the water that's left is in contact with fluoride-rich rocks for a much longer time, so it leaches into the supply. Drinking this leads to fluorosis, a terrible disease that causes bone deformities and mottling of teeth.
That sounds horrific. And what about in the east?
In West Bengal and parts of Bihar, the drop in the water table has exposed arsenic-rich rock layers to oxygen for the first time. This oxidation process releases arsenic into the water. And arsenic poisoning is a slow, silent killer. It causes skin lesions, organ failure, and eventually cancer.
So in the west, the water cripples you. In the east, it poisons you.
And in our breadbasket, in Punjab and Haryana, it destroys the land itself. Intensive irrigation leads to salinity.
Explain that mechanism. How does adding fresh water make the soil salty? It seems counterintuitive.
It's all about evaporation.
Yeah.
You flood the field with groundwater. The intense heat evaporates the pure water, but the tiny amount of salt that was dissolved in that water gets left behind on the surface. Now, do that twice a year for 30 or 40 years, and you get a crust of salt on your field. The soil becomes USAR, or sterile.
So it's a tragic irony. The very water that made the land so fertile is now slowly killing it.
It is.
These consequences, fluoride in the west, arsenic in the east, salinity in the north, are crucial connections. If you get a question on the health impacts of water scarcity, you don't just say thirst. You have to talk about fluorosis and arsenicosis.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the entire process of overexploitation.
Okay, moving on to section 4. Sectoral usage. Who is actually drinking all this water? I think there's a common misconception among city dwellers that the water crisis is because of, long showers or people washing their cars.
It is neither of those, not even close. India is an agrarian economy, and the water usage reflects that overwhelmingly. Just look at the data from the text. In the surface water sector, 89% goes to agriculture.
89%. That leaves almost nothing for anyone else.
And for groundwater, it's even more skewed.
Yeah.
92% is used for agriculture.
So we are literally pumping our ancient aquifers dry just to grow food.
Yes. For comparison, industrial use is about 2% of surface water and 5% of groundwater. And domestic use, all our drinking, washing, municipal needs, is just 9% of surface water and a tiny 3% of groundwater.
So when we talk about water conservation, if we're not talking about farming practices, we are basically ignoring 90% of the problem. You can turn off the tap while you're brushing your teeth, and you should, but it won't save the country's water profile.
Precisely. The text then explains why agriculture is such a guzzler. It comes down to the spatiotemporal variability of rainfall.
That's a fancy term. Unpack that for us.
Spatial means space rain falls heavily in the northeast, not so much in Rajasthan. Temporal means time. The monsoon is only for 3-4 months, but we need to eat all year round.
Right.
The winter and summer seasons are largely dry. So to grow crops during those seasons, your Rabi and Zaid crops, you need assured irrigation. You simply cannot rely on the sky.
And specific crops must play a huge role here, too.
Oh, they do. We have addicted our entire agricultural system to water-intensive crops. Rice, sugarcane, jute. The Green Revolution in Punjab, Haryana, and western UP was built entirely on the back of this intensive irrigation. The text notes that wells and tube wells account for massive percentages of the net irrigated area in these states.
Like what kind of numbers are we talking?
In Gujarat, agriculture is 86% reliant on wells. In Punjab, over 85% of the net sown area is under irrigation. It's almost completely artificial agriculture.
This connects beautifully to a mains question from 2015, GS1.
Yes, I remember that one. The question was, India is well endowed with freshwater resources. Critically examine why it still suffers from water scarcity.
That sounds like a contradiction. Well endowed, but scarce.
It's meant to be. The examiner wants you to explain that exact paradox, and the answer lies in everything we just discussed.
How so?
We are well endowed in aggregate. Remember that 4,000 cubic kilometers of rain? It's a lot of water. But we suffer from scarcity because of mismanagement and spatial inequality. We grow thirsty crops like sugarcane in dry regions like Maharashtra using deep groundwater. We use flood irrigation instead of drip irrigation. The scarcity is largely man-made through policy and bad agricultural choices.
So it's not that nature has failed us.
No, it's that we are failing to manage what nature has given us.
That is a really powerful breakdown. It frames the crisis as a management issue, not just a weather issue. Which leads us perfectly to the next failure. Section 5, Water Quality and Pollution.
The text defines pollution quite simply. Any foreign matter, microorganisms, chemicals, industrial waste, that renders water unfit for its intended use.
And the culprits are the usual suspects, I assume.
They are industrial effluents, certainly.
Yeah.
Canneries, chemical plants, but also agricultural runoff. All those fertilizers and insecticides we use to boost yields, they just wash straight into the rivers during the rain. And of course, domestic waste, raw sewage.
There's an interesting point in the text about the seasonality of pollution. It says that the pollution concentration actually peaks in the summer.
Yes.
Now, why summer? I would have thought the monsoon would wash more dirt and filth into the river.
It's all about dilution. In the monsoon, the river's flow is huge, so it dilutes the filth. You know, a drop of praisen in an ocean doesn't really matter.
Right.
But in summer, the river is just a trickle. The amount of sewage and industrial waste entering from the cities remains the same. We don't stop flushing our toilets in June, but the fresh water flow to dilute it is minimal, so the concentration of the toxicity skyrockets.
And the text specifically highlights the Ganga and the Yamuna as basically dead rivers in certain stretches because of this.
It does. It mentions that the Yamuna in Delhi essentially becomes a glorified drain. If you've ever driven over the Yamuna Bridge in Delhi in summer, you've seen that white chemical froth.
I have. It's disgusting.
That's the phosphate from detergents and industrial waste, super concentrated because there's almost no natural flow.
So this brings up the legislative aspect. It's not like we haven't tried. We have laws.
Oh, plenty of laws.
Yeah.
The Water Prevention and Control of Pollution Act of 1974, the Environment Protection Act of 1986, the Water Cess Act of 1977.
So we have all these laws on the books. Why are the rivers still so dirty?
The expert commentary in the text is quite damning on this. It says these acts fail due to ineffective implementation and a lack of public awareness. You can have a law, but if the State Pollution Control Board doesn't enforce it, or if the fine for polluting is cheaper than the cost of treating the waste, then industries will just pay the fine and keep polluting.
So it's a failure of governance.
At its core, yes.
Okay.
Complete failure of a governance.
And this connects to a mains question from 2013 in GS3.
That's right. That question asked you to enumerate the national water policy and, taking the River Ganges as an example, discuss strategies for pollution control.
How would you even begin to tackle that?
Well, you'd start by citing the legislative failures that are mentioned right here in the NCERT. Then you would discuss the need for a shift from just cleaning the river to preventing the pollution in the first place. You know, programs like Namami Gange, though they're newer than the text, fit here. The idea is you have to stop the sewage from entering the river in the first place.
And involve the community.
You have to. It ties back to the sheer density of population living along the banks. If you have millions of people flushing their toilets directly into a river with low flow, you have an unmanageable crisis.
Okay, let's recap where we are. We have scarce water, the groundwater is being drained and poisoned, and the surface water is polluted. It looks incredibly bleak. But the chapter pivots here, Section 6. Conservation and management, the way forward.
The equation is simple, really. Declining fresh water plus increasing demand equals crisis. The text champions watershed management as the primary solution.
Let's unpack that term. Watershed management sounds a bit technical. Explain it like I'm 5.
Okay, imagine a bathtub. Everything that falls into that bathtub eventually goes down the drain. That bathtub is a watershed.
I'm with you.
Watershed management means managing everything inside that tub, the land, the water, the plants, the animals, and the humans, as a single integrated unit. It involves preventing runoff, stopping the water from rushing down the drain too fast, and encouraging storage and recharge.
So it's not just about building one big dam at the bottom.
Exactly. It's about treating the slopes, planting trees to hold the soil, building thousands of small barriers to slow the water down so it has time to seep underground and recharge the aquifers. And crucially, the NCERT says it relies on community participation. You cannot manage a watershed from a desk in Delhi. The villagers themselves have to be involved in building the check dams.
The text lists some specific government programs. These are great for prelims matching questions, so pay attention here.
Yes, you should definitely memorize these. 1. Haryali. This is a central government-sponsored project, but it's executed by the Gram Panchayats. The goal is enabling rural populations to conserve water for drinking, irrigation, fisheries, and afforestation.
Okay, Haryali, what's next?
2. Neeru-Meeru. This translates to Water and You. It's a program from Andhra Pradesh. And 3. Arvari Pani Sansad. This is in Alwar, Rajasthan. They are famous for literally restoring a dead river, the Arvari, by building thousands of johads, which are small earthen check dams.
But the absolute star of this section, the main event, is the case study of Ralegan Siddhi in Maharashtra. I love this story. It plays out like a movie script.
It is a remarkable story, a classic turnaround. To understand Ralegan Siddhi, you have to go back to 1975. It's in the Ahmednagar district, a drought-prone rain shadow area. The village was an absolute basket case.
What was it like?
Severe poverty. No water for farming. The text mentions that because farming had completely failed, the illicit liquor trade became the main economy. Alcoholism was rampant. Domestic violence was high. It was a completely broken society.
And then came the transformation. Who started it?
It was led by a retired army personnel, Anna Hazar, though the text really focuses on the community action he inspired. He rallied the villagers. But it wasn't magic. It was strict social engineering combined with simple hydrology.
What exactly did they do? What were the mechanics of it?
First, they started voluntary labor, or shramdan. Since they had no money, they donated their sweat. They built percolation tanks and check dams to catch every single drop of rain. But just building a dam isn't enough if the soil on the hills is loose and just washes away.
Right, you need to stop the erosion.
So they had to reforest the hills. But then you have a problem. Goats eat the saplings.
Of course.
So they implemented something called social fencing. This is a key term you should know. They didn't build a barbed wire fence. The community itself agreed to a ban on open grazing. They stall-fed their cattle. They banned the felling of trees. They even went further and banned liquor and the practice of dowry.
So it was a holistic social reform that was completely tied to water conservation.
Yes, and the results were, frankly, miraculous.
Right.
The trees grew back, holding the soil. The check dams stopped the runoff. The water percolated down. The groundwater table rose dramatically. They went from having maybe 70, 80 acres of irrigated land to hundreds of acres. They started exporting onions to the Gulf. The liquor trade vanished because people finally had productive work to do.
It's incredible. It proves that the solution isn't always a multi-billion-dollar concrete dam. Sometimes it's a small earthen check dam and, sheer community will.
Absolutely.
And this case study is the perfect answer for the main's 2016 GS1 question.
Which was?
In what way micro-watershed development projects help in water conservation in drought-prone and semi-arid regions of India?
You just described Ralegan Siddhi. That's your answer right there.
It is.
You explain the mechanics. Check dams halt the surface runoff. Percolation tanks recharge the aquifers, and social fencing restores the vegetation, which improves the entire hydrological cycle. It proves that local, small-scale interventions can sometimes solve macro-level drought problems better than massive centralized projects.
Let's move to Section 7, Rainwater Harvesting and Policy Frameworks. The text contrasts the old methods with the new ones.
We have such a rich heritage of this in India. In Rajasthan, you have the famous kunds or tankas, which are these ingenious underground tanks to store drinking water. We have traditional lakes and ponds all over the country. The text argues we need to revive these traditional systems, not just rely on government pipes.
And the modern adaptation of that is rooftop harvesting.
Which is absolutely crucial in urban areas where you have so much concrete. The text specifically highlights the Tamil Nadu model. Tamil Nadu was the very first state in India to make water harvesting structures compulsory for all buildings. Yes. You literally could not get your building plan approved without one.
That's the kind of policy with teeth that we need. Speaking of policy, let's just touch on the National Water Policy of 2002. What did it prioritize?
This is a hierarchy you must know for the exam. The top priority is drinking water. Not agriculture, not industry. Drinking water for human beings comes first.
And second?
Second is irrigation. Third is hydropower.
Now that makes sense ethically, but does it actually match the reality on the ground?
That's the great debate, isn't it?
Yeah.
In reality, as we saw, agriculture takes the lion's share. often at the expense of drinking water in downstream villages. The policy also emphasized limiting groundwater exploitation and monitoring water quality.
The text also briefly mentions the interlinking of rivers. This is the grand idea of connecting a surplus river, like the Brahmaputra, to a deficit river, like the Kaveri, via a network of massive canals.
It presents it as a potential remedy to transfer water from surplus to deficit areas. It sounds logical on paper, just balancing the national book.
But it's hugely controversial.
Highly. And this links directly to a mains question from 2020 in GS1. The question asked if the interlinking of rivers can provide viable solutions to the twin problems of flood and drought.
And how would you answer that?
Well, the answer gives you the potential benefit, the pro argument. But in your mains answer, you would also need to bring in the ecological concerns. Changing a river's natural course can destroy habitats. It displaces millions of people. And the biggest question is there really any surplus water, or does the river need that flow to keep its own delta and ecosystem alive?
A very complex issue. So we're coming to the end of the chapter now, and there is a really provocative thought that's raised in the conclusion, and it's all about pricing.
This is the elephant in the room. The NCERT explicitly mentions that the pricing of water is a crucial, unavoidable issue.
The idea being, because it's cheap or even free, we waste it.
It's Economics 101. If a resource is subsidized to the point of being free like electricity for tube wells, as in parts of Punjab, there is zero incentive to conserve it. The farmer will flood the field because it costs him nothing extra to run the pump for another 5 hours.
So the big question, should we price water?
It is politically explosive. No politician wants to be the one to tax water. But environmentally, it is becoming necessary. The expert view, which the book hints at, is that until water has a real economic value attached to it, conservation will always remain a slogan rather than a widespread practice.
So let's summarize the key takeaways from this entire deep dive. What are the main points you need to remember?
Okay. 1. India has a fundamental geographic mismatch. Lots of people, 16% of the world's total, but not nearly enough water, only 4%.
2.
2. Agriculture is the primary consumer, the big guzzler, and it's often highly inefficient. We're growing thirsty crops in dry lands.
3.
3. Groundwater is our strategic reserve, and we are draining it dry in the northwest, which leads to salinity, while the east suffers from arsenic contamination. The solution isn't just about building big dams. It's about community-led watershed management, like we saw in Ralegan City.
And finally, 5.
Pollution is shrinking the usable supply of water even further. And this problem gets much, much worse in the summer.
And for all of you listening, here is a final provocative thought to mull over. We haven't really talked about the idea of virtual water. Think about this. When we export 1 kilogram of basmati rice to the Middle East or to Europe, we aren't just exporting grain. We are exporting the thousands of liters of groundwater it took to grow that grain.
That is a brilliant and terrifying point. If it takes, say, 3,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of rice, and we export millions of tons of it.
Then what are we doing?
India, a water-scarce nation, is effectively a net exporter of water to the world. We are selling our scarcity. Is that a sustainable trade policy in the long run?
Something to think about next time you see a headline about record rice exports. Listeners, we really hope this deep dive helped you connect the static NCERT text to the dynamic demands of the UPSC exam. If this helped you, please do us a favor and subscribe.
And if you are capable, please check out our Patreon. It keeps us independent and really focused on delivering this kind of quality.
And you know where the notes are. The public Telegram channel for the free basics and the private library for the premium deep dive materials. Just DM us to join.
Keep learning, stay curious, and please conserve water.
See you in the next deep dive. Goodbye.